In 1899, an Aztec temple was uncovered beneath a Texas city, then never heard of again. The discoverer was Leo Berson, an archaeologist, polyglot, and one of the most prolific conmen in American history. Today on American Strangeness, El Paso's Buried City and the King of Bilk, Part 1. In 1899, a daring archaeologist claimed to have discovered the ruins of an ancient city, possibly of Aztec origin, buried beneath undeveloped land in El Paso, Texas. Was it true, or just another newspaper tall tale from the late 19th century? Digging into this mystery unearths the shameful saga of Dr. Leo Berson, perhaps one of the most prolific conmen the Western world has ever known. His nefarious career spanned continents and decades, peaking with a scheme so far-reaching that it roped in the president of Mexico. Not all the pieces fit perfectly, though, and the question of what exactly might lie hidden under the city of El Paso is an open mystery. Let's begin with the news of this shocking find as it tore across the national press early in the final year of the 1800s. Part 1. The Monumental Find in El Paso. On January 10, 1899, the El Paso Daily Herald breathlessly broke the following story. An ancient Aztec city buried beneath the soil of El Paso, which is supposed to contain vast stores of gold and manuscripts of the extinct race that once inhabited Mexico. Monday's edition is the site of a castle built of white marble, which was the abode of priests. Is El Paso built above the ruins of the buried city? Is the question now being asked, and if the word of Dr. Berson, a learned archaeologist, is to be taken as conclusive, the answer should be in the affirmative. That eminent scientist asserts with positive assurance that where the present flourishing and modern metropolis of the Southwest, El Paso, now stands, was centuries ago the site of a magnificent city of castles and palaces whose walls were of solid masonry and polished marble. Before Cortez set foot on the soil of Mexico, before the Emperor Montezuma was tortured by the cruel Spaniards into disclosing the hiding place of his gold, and before the unhappy Aztec was driven to the mountains by his merciless conquerors and his beautiful palaces and mines of fabulous richness confiscated, Dr. Berson claims that a beautiful Aztec castle stood at this point on the banks of the Rio Grande, and that it was buried beneath the present surface of the earth by a volcanic eruption of old Mount Franklin. A learned man, Dr. Berson has spent the best years of his life investigating the ruins of Mexico and collecting relics of vast importance to science. His researches in Diaz's domains have been under the auspices of the government, and he has had complete access to the archives where the most ancient records of that historic country are stored. Among the musty and decaying records, he found an old parchment containing an account of a splendid castle, surrounded by a thriving city, that once stood upon the left bank of the Rio Grande. The castle was used as a temple by Aztec priests, and within its walls vast treasures were stored and valuable records kept. Realizing immediately the benefit science would derive could he but locate the castle or its ruins, and procure some of the relics of the ancient and extinct inhabitants of the land, Dr. Berson sought further among the old records until he ran across a chart that showed him the exact location of the spot where the castle once stood. He became enthused with the magnitude of his discovery and, in an audience with President Diaz, persuaded him to authorize a search for the ruins and share the expense of the work. The president, being a patron of the arts and sciences and a champion of literature, as well as a scholar and a gentleman, readily agreed to assist the learned explorer financially. Dr. Berson accordingly set out to discover the lost city and unearth the valuable records of the buried castle. Unfortunately, he started at the mouth of the river and investigated the Mexican shore, that in his opinion being the left bank. After months of fruitless search, it occurred to him that the left bank meant the bank at the left-hand side of a man when he faces downstream. The spot located. After that, things were easy and results were astonishing. By means of his chart, the doctor readily located the exact spot where the ancient Aztec castle stood and now stands with its highest point covered by sand and fragments of volcanic rock. The chart showed that the castle stood less than 3/4 of a mile distant from where the El Paso custom now stands. The castle, says the doctor, is buried beneath the soil of H.M. Mundy's addition, within the corporate limits of this city. When Dr. Berson located the spot, he was for a time wild with joy. He did not stop to consider that the land thereabout belonged to Americans who were in the habit of selling soil at so much per front foot, and would likely permit no one to dig there or even to excavate buried cities. In the excess of his joy, he thought of nothing but the magnitude of his discovery, and lost no time in commencing to shovel dirt. The ruins unearthed. An excavation near the brow of a small hill east of the SP track, midway between the foundry and water tank, yielded a valuable reward for the scientist's labors. The hole was about 15 feet in circumference, and at a depth of 8 feet, a wall of solid masonry, composed of huge square stones cemented together, was found. It seemed to be the covering of a vault or corner of a building. This vault was not opened, but a number of skulls were found beside it and brought to light. A peculiarly carved stone was also discovered, with 3 prongs pointing in as many directions. These, said the doctor, indicate the direction of the walls. After discovering the solid wall, Dr. Berson was more than ever convinced that his researches and years of study had at last been rewarded. The work stopped. About this time, J.J. Stewart, Mr. Mundy's manager, discovered that Mundy's addition was being excavated. He considered it his duty to stop the work, and did so. Dr. Berson took Mr. Stewart to the hole he had dug and explained to him his plans. He said he was sure that if the solid wall was followed up and the dirt removed, a door would be found. That he was positive that the vault contained both vast stores of treasure as well as valuable ancient manuscripts. The scientist cared not for the riches, but begged to be permitted to proceed so that the treasured manuscripts, descriptive of an extinct race, might be recovered. Mr. Stewart told the scientist that he would have to ask Mr. Mundy at the City of Mexico for permission to dig further. The scientist took the address and immediately wrote a letter to the owner of the property. He referred to President Diaz as to the subject of his researches, and courteously requested to be allowed to go on with his work in the interest of science. The reply to the letter has not yet been received. Dr. Berson is described by Mr. Stewart as a man of vast learning. His appearance would indicate that he is a Jew. He has been a teacher in one of the foremost colleges in Mexico, and has devoted his life to the study of extinct races and their languages and sign writing. Historic stone found. Some years ago, he recovered a large stone in Mexico that was covered with hieroglyphics. These he deciphered and found the records contained thereon to be of immense historic value. President Diaz caused the stone to be removed to the City of Mexico at a cost of $12,000. The doctor has had a force of men numbering 25 or 30 working under him and making excavations according to his directions for many months in search of the lost Aztec city. A Herald reporter visited the spot yesterday afternoon where the scientist made his excavations. They were found just as described. One opening had been made high up on the hillside, and it was from this one that the keystone of the building had been taken. The other opening was near the SP track and about 10 feet deep. It was here that the solid stone masonry is located, which is supposed to be the covering of the treasure vault, and which will be opened as soon as Mr. Mundy's permission is obtained. So, who was this learned man and eminent scientist, Dr. Leo Berson? It depends on the locale in which he was operating and the identity he chose for whatever scheme was up his sleeve. During the 1870s in England and Europe, he was the notorious bigamist Reverend Dr. Reuben Elender Berson. In the mid-1880s, after relocating to the United States, he was known throughout St. Louis and the Midwest as con artist Dr. Archibald Richard. He would soon after rechristen himself Dr. Leo Berson, and embark on an infamous career as a charlatan spanning the continental U.S. and Mexico over the next 2 decades. Newspapers in Europe, the U.S., and Mexico were persistently hot on Berson's trail, sometimes cooperating to expose him as he stayed on the move, and repeated his various scams in each new city. The Los Angeles Times described Berson in 1887 as an ineffable holy fraud and pious prevaricator, and proclaimed him King Bilk of the Pacific Coast. In Part 2, we learn more about this thorough and unmitigated scoundrel.